CARE Act funding and the policies and stuff. So I'd like to start off by commending St. Louis County for continuing to be a leader in your timber management COVID-19 response. Your actions will be an example for other public land management agencies to follow. And your investment of CARE Act funding, specifically in St. Louis County's timber industry, and your timber permit modification policies will be helpful. But I want you to hear from a couple of loggers firsthand and truckers about the financial need. So so as you consider the CARES Act funding distribution, you have an idea of how big the investment is from loggers. So you want to start off, Howard?
Yeah, Scott kind of asked me to come and give a little bit of a history about myself and my business and how it started off, and give you kind of a picture of how the timber industry works from a logger's perspective. 2013, I graduated from high school and started fooling around a little bit with cutting wood, and did firewood for several years and just started off small. 2016, got married, and people said, you know, you got to get a real job. And went and worked for Hewlin Brothers for one summer, and it just wasn't my cup of tea. Really liked cutting wood, being in the woods, running my own business with my own schedule. And so went full-time in the woods 2017, and have enjoyed it ever since. 2019, switched to having employees as opposed to working with multiple subcontractors, subbing out a lot of work. And we had 5 employees full-time last winter, a couple of part-time and myself. Before COVID, really before things started getting scary in March, everything was looking very, very optimistic for the summer. Keep crews on full-time, basically go wide open and pay for some investment. Because a lot of loggers, I've run a conservative operation, but a lot of loggers have $25,000, $30,000 a month in fixed cost payments on equipment. I've always been taught to kind of live within your means. I've kept that a lot more conservative myself, not to criticize others. Everybody runs a business different. So when the mills started shutting down and saying we don't need wood, I laid off 4 of my 5 full-time guys. We really haven't harvested a fresh stick of wood since March. Markets are just pretty lousy with the shutdown of the Verso plant. The softwood market is non-existent. And trying to supplement doing dirt work, that kind of thing, but it's a new market to get into. And so there's a lot of challenges associated with it. And I just want to kind of, you know, the mines is a big trickle effect. You know, a lot of businesses are basically run off of supporting the mines, and the timber industry has a pretty big trickle effect too that I don't think we fully realize, because it's not one big logger buying a lot of stuff, it's a lot of little loggers. You know, we're a smaller company, we burn like 1,500 gallons a week. Just buying parts like Napa, $2,000 a month at times. So we support a lot of spin-off businesses as well. And so I would just encourage you, don't cut the timber industry short, but you'll see a lot of other small businesses pay the price as well.
That's, you know, coming from Ben and somebody new into the industry, that's where the future of the forest products industry lies, and not a lot of young people coming into it. So we're fortunate to have Ben, who's willing to do it. I received a text I want to share with you from Mike Nielsen, a logger up in Ely, Minnesota, kind of on the other end of the spectrum as far as, you know, a little larger and stuff. Nielsen Logging has a $3.5 million gross revenue annually that's injected into the economy. $3.5 million, one logging company up in Ely. 8 to 10 full-time employees with a competitive salary, up to 6 contractors between loggers and truckers. So overall, this is his words, I'm responsible for the livelihood of up to 20 families. Business side of things, we're running at about half capacity. All the fixed costs do not cut in half with the production cut. We are also losing efficiency by not cutting and selling 100% of the trees on permits. Payroll is $10,000 or more per week. $10,000 per week in equipment payments alone, approximately $75,000 in annual insurance premiums, working on half revenue. It's not sustainable. The key is that we need to look at how these guys survive, and that's what our strategy is right now. And they cannot survive without financial assistance. I want to pass around these pictures here. Each of you can take one. Commissioner McDonald, you're probably familiar with what I'm showing right there.
You are.
As Mike Nielsen, a trucker out of Ely as well, sent me this picture this morning.
Aaron Nicholson, actually.
And I said Mike Nielsen. I always do that to those two guys. I get them mixed up. Thank you very much. They work together, and they've worked together and grown up together, those two. So as Aaron said, when he sent me this picture this morning, he said, here's $500,000 worth of specialized logging trucks, not moving for the past 3 months, sitting there parked. Says the saying is, wheels that don't turn, don't earn. And that's something to think about. This equipment sitting idle, they still have payments on it and everything else, and they're big payments, as Mike is talking about 10 grand in equipment. And when you're talking about, 20 grand for guys, bigger guys. So just wanted to share that with you, kind of put things in perspective. The ACLT, the organization I've worked with for 16 years, is a nonprofit trade association, a 501c6 organization. And we have unmatched institutional knowledge, networking, and resources to ensure that the funds are successfully targeted and effectively utilized, the CARES funds that you guys are looking at appropriating in the near future. The ACLT's unique expertise and industry insight will assist St. Louis County in their economic pandemic response. So therefore, we request that the ACLT be directly involved in the administration of the funds and program. And we've had follow-up meetings with Matt as well in talking about these things, and we appreciate that. But as the second largest private economic contributor in St. Louis County, the ACLT respectfully requests that St. Louis County consider increasing the CARES Act funding committed to helping the timber industry survive to ensure it's sufficient to effectively address the financial needs of the industry. Kind of put things in perspective, and not to pick on anything or any other industry, but between St. Louis County and the city of Duluth, they recently provided $2 million in economic incentive for a Costco to go into Duluth. We would just like to make sure that the timber industry as a whole is treated or receives comparable assistance as a store, a grocery store there. So again, the ACLT appreciates and supports St. Louis County's financial assistance. We're not being critical. You guys have been great partners. We go to you first because you're a great example, and then others follow your lead. So we're not being critical there, but we look forward to working closely with the planning and the land departments in the development, administration, distribution, and implementation of timber industry assistance programs and policy. That pretty much covers it. We just want to make sure that we can get some of this COVID funding into the industry to help these guys survive, because they've been idle for months as it is, and from what we're hearing, certain mills are looking at only buying wood 7 months a year, getting away from summer buys. So there's a lot of challenges that are threatening the industry. With some financial assistance, hopefully you guys can survive and recover. I'd be happy to answer any questions about the industry you might have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you, Chair.
It's always good to hear perspectives, especially from someone boots on the ground. Scott, we know you and we respect you, but it's nice to have someone come in that's actually doing the logging and telling a story about a local interest.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Mr. Chair, I can certainly sign up for the citizens' input if you'd like me to, but I do have a story to share with this board. And as a citizen, and as a commissioner, quite frankly, you know, this past weekend was the hottest, most miserable weekend of the year that I could remember, at least. So I decided to go out and do some logging. Not just logging, but we got some pictures. This logging was done to clear a spot for a septic system that we're installing at my, hopefully you can get them up there, to clear for a septic system that we're installing at my in-laws' place that, following the ordinance, we're putting in a brand new septic system, but I'm doing it before I sell it. This trailer full of logs, the next one that he's going to show you, the truck full, those are 12 foots, by the way. And I'm not trying to compete with the loggers, trust me, but
You know.
this is, and I'm not, no. But folks, my son and I cut all of these off of a spot that, quite frankly, I'm sharing a Commissioner Forsman story here, okay? My dear friend, Commissioner Forsman story. We cut all of this off of a spot that's 39 feet, and I'll have him keep going. That's the firewood. 39 feet by 103 feet. That's the spot where the septic system is going to be built, okay? Again, 39 feet by 103 feet, which is 3,914 square feet. Folks, there's 43,500 square feet in an acre. 43,500 square feet in an acre. We currently own St. Louis County and manage just over 900,000 acres. The next picture is the biomass that came off that spot. This all came off of a spot 39 feet by 103 feet. And for those non-believers, it's still all sitting there. I'd be more than happy to show anybody after the meeting today the exact spot and all of what you see in these pictures. Because I don't want somebody to come back and say that can't be. Because folks, the reality is, it is. But again, imagine as you look back at these slides, imagine this came off of 1/10 of an acre. And in fairness, folks, we own 900,000 acres. Let's say 700,000 of them are in timber production. Do the math. Do the math, folks. We have the potential, that biomass, and I'm going to pass this around because Scott and I and a couple of other folks went up this past winter up through Ensign, and I know you guys have seen this before. But folks, that's the biodiesel that Duluth is planning on burning in their steam plant. As we're investing COVID monies, we have opportunities that we had better capture if we lose these young loggers. And by the way, he comes from a great farm family, which is why he ended up in the woods, I'm pretty sure. But he comes from a great farm family out in the Palo Markham area. And the opportunities, if we lose these loggers, and I'm afraid we're going to lose some. The question is, how are we going to manage those 700 to 900,000 acres and control fires and support our economy? Administrator Gray, I read the very nice presentation that was given us last week at our workshop. Went back and read through it. It talks about the mining industry, talks about the Port of Duluth, talks about the medical industry in Duluth as drivers in our economy. And once again, we forgot the logging industry. We just totally forgot the logging industry. And it is the number 2 industry. Folks, I wanted to show you what comes off of 1/10 of an acre in northeastern Minnesota. 1/10 of 1 acre. And if we don't figure out how we're going to utilize that to the best of our abilities and help this timber industry, this is an opportunity we have, and I believe we will regret it for years to come. Lastly, Mr. Chair, I'm going to quote a song which I know always bothers my administrator greatly whenever I quote country songs especially. But you know, there's a pop song that says, "You don't know what you've got till it's gone. You don't know what you've got till it's gone." And folks, we have a timber industry, a vibrant timber industry. In 90-degree heat, 2 people can put that up in a weekend, but these guys are putting that up in an hour or 2, managing our forests. So I want to urge this board to strongly consider putting more money, more dollars into an industry that we already have. We're not chasing anything, folks. But if we don't start doing preliminary engineering on that type of conversion, and by the way, I stood there and watched that come out of the mill, the wood go in and that diesel come out. We were there when that was captured. That's not somebody's guess. If we don't do that now, we are going to regret it in the future. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for allowing me this opportunity. I know it's out of the ordinary, but it just so happened that as I was cutting this weekend, I couldn't help but think about the logging industry as I was doing it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
As we give it a go, I'm sorry.
I just want to correct Commissioner Nelson on presentation last week that I thought was very thorough by our administration. And the only industry that had dedicated money in the CARES Act was the timber industry. Thank you.
I was a city planner for 4 years in a small town of Wabik, and first lesson I learned about economic development was you take care of what you have before you chase other things. And you're right, we need to take care of this timber industry, make sure we have it for the future. We have it now, let's take care of it. Let's make sure we keep it. Thanks.
Thank you both. Ryan, is there anyone else?
Jeremy, anybody else?
Yes, Mr. Chair, can I clarify one thing, please? Because I love being corrected. Makes my whole
Point of
day.
order, we're way off the
I asked the
agenda.
chair for
So,
permission.
I know, but I'm just saying to the chair, we're way out of order.
I'll tell you what, Commissioner Jewell, since we've had there's been a little bit of an awkward, strange situation where we had commissioners talking, we'll let it go. Did you have something to say, Commissioner Nelson?
Mr. Chair, I was referring to the report that we did not cover at the meeting, and it is the report that we were handed at the meeting, not what we covered at the meeting. And I did read that report from cover to cover. It is a very thorough report. But when we talked about the economy, in that report, our number 2 industry was not included. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Nothing else?
I would just ask them that, number one, we take a personal privilege, and then I'd really be interested in one of the serious problems, and maybe administration can report on what's happening with the coronavirus and our response. So I know it's not on the agenda, either which says, but it seems like a really important thing. It seems like we have new places that are popping up, and we ought to know them.
Okay, we'll take a 5-minute personal privilege.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. We are back. Welcome back, everyone. A couple of things. Commissioner Jewell had asked that we do a update on COVID, and I talked to administration, and they felt kind of short notice. What they'd like to do is come back next week and have a little bit more of a time to prepare and have information ready. If that works for you?
Yep.
Okay.
And, Mr. Chair, I would just add 2 things on the COVID front. A reminder that I know you've already mentioned, but the testing that's going on today in Chisholm And we've had many people sign up, and we expect the number of drop-ins as well. We urge you to take advantage of the appointment process if you can. On the COVID update front, we will have a more formal presentation, just so the public is aware, of course, that refer to our website for the COVID section where there's updates on a lot of statistics. So we've got interactive models so that if you have certain issues or certain types of themes that you're looking for, locations, types of impacts, number of tests and things like that, all that information is on our St. Louis County website. So I urge you to take advantage of that if you have an interest. And I know that a lot of our citizens and even our municipalities and other businesses are utilizing that information. So a shout out to our public health officials for all the work that they're doing, and our data analytics people that are just doing incredible work as we go throughout this process. With respect to the presentation, I appreciate it very much. The representatives from the logging industry coming forward. There's a lot of information flowing, and I do want to acknowledge to the entire board there's been great support and awareness of the challenges of the logging industry, and we're continuing to refine and work on our CARES Act funding formulary, which we will present to the board in a more comprehensive fashion on August 11th. And certainly I want to acknowledge to both Commissioners Jewell and Nelson that and Boyle, who have all talked on this a little bit just recently, that there's high awareness, and I appreciate the board's support and sensitivity to the challenges of that industry and all of our businesses and citizens throughout St. Louis County. So we'll be I think it'll be a very informing session on August 11th, and we are working diligently to identify key industries, industry themes, and needs of our businesses and residents throughout St. Louis County so that we can allocate these monies and suggest a good distribution formula to the board. So hang in there with us. And again, I want to thank particularly Scott and his team for coming forward today. It's always in my mind to hear from an entrepreneur, a new entrepreneur, relatively new, and the challenges of this COVID that aren't unique to him or his business. It's a pretty compelling story. So thanks for the feedback on that. And Commissioner Jewell, thanks for the extra week to talk a little bit more in depth about COVID, because we are past due for an update other than our daily and weekly updates that we provide to the board. So I know that all of you are in the loop. So with that, I just wanted to acknowledge that we're working diligently and aggressively on this CARES Act funding, and we'll come back to the board with, I think, a comprehensive program that will really be effective.
Thank you. Just briefly, I do want to mention, since there's people that are watching, and I did get a request during our break, COVID testing, free of charge, Minnesota Discovery Center / Iron World, whatever you'd like to call it. The entrance is that entrance near McDonald's in Chisholm. It's free of charge. Come in, get tested, pre-register. It'll be a little bit easier, a little bit quicker if you do that. But if you don't get a chance to pre-register, definitely come in, get the test. It'll be from 12 to 7 today and 10 to 5 tomorrow. So they're waiting and they're ready to give tests. So if you get a chance, definitely stop up there and get the opportunity to get a test, and we'll get some better ideas where we are numbers-wise with COVID on the iron range. Okay, thank you. Now, we'll go back to, we have a public hearing pursuant to Resolution 30-312 adopted June 9th. It's a CDBG Emergency Solutions Grant CARES Act funding and amendment to the 2020 Action Plan. It's letter 20-260. Bill, could you read the introduction?
This public hearing is being conducted pursuant to applicable Minnesota statutes and the standing rules of the county board. A copy of the standing rules is available upon request. A formal record will be made of the proceedings. Accordingly, we request that all speakers sign in and state your name and address at the beginning of your testimony. Both verbal and documentary evidence will be accepted by the board. The order for the hearing will be as follows. First, St. Louis County Administration will make the initial presentation. Second, representatives of other governmental entities may appear and give testimony. Third, supporters of the proposed action may appear and give testimony. Next, opponents of the proposed action may appear and give testimony. And lastly, other comments or evidence from the public. Commissioners may question witnesses at the end of their testimony or at the end of all testimony.
Thank you. Would you make the?
Thank you, Chair Jugovich. Remarks and overview for this round of both CDBG and ESG monies will be led by Director Johnson on behalf of the administration.
Commissioner or Board Chair Jugovich, St. Louis County Commissioners. We, on April 2nd, near the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, St. Louis County received a letter from HUD indicating that we were receiving special allocation funds for the Community Development Block Grant and the Emergency Solutions Grant. The amounts for the Community Development Block Grant were $1,164,000. For the Emergency Solutions Grant was $578,000. As a requirement, we had to go through a public process in order to determine how to spend those monies. The Community Development Block Grant is targeted towards helping low and moderate income individuals outside of the city of Duluth area in St. Louis County. The Emergency Solutions Grant funds are targeted towards helping homelessness issues outside of the city of Duluth in St. Louis County. So we set up a survey that was well received, had 400 different citizens and stakeholder groups weigh in on where our priorities should be. Based on that, we created a grant application, and the results of the process, I would like to invite Community Development Planner Brad Gustafson up here to talk about the highlights of the conclusion. So the Community Development Block Grant funds was run through the CDBG Advisory Board, and their recommendations here can be found in your board letter. So Brad, welcome.
Hi, Brad Gustafson, the planner with Community Development. So our advisory committee reconvened for the third time this year at the beginning of July. They were presented with all eligible applications that the community development staff vetted to determine eligibility. And their funding recommendations are in front of you along with the board letter. Should I go through those?
Just if they have any questions on it. Commissioners, did you have any?
I'm just more curious than anything, the one under the community facilities, the State Buell Medical Service Building, what exactly happens in that building?
So that houses
So
their,
I'm
sorry, Commissioners and Mr. Chair. So the Buell Emergency Services houses their fire department and ambulance services.
Okay. So it's kind of like a township with their volunteer fire department kind of building like that.
Correct.
So, Mr. Chair and St. Louis County Commissioners, I had Brad participate in case there were any of the specific details on the applications. The community development staff is the one that worked with the board, and so the recommendation is in front of you. If you have any more questions on applications, Brad is definitely the individual that read them all.
Chair Jugovich.
Yeah.
So, I think my question, either, I don't know who is, what's the impact of this additional funding? So, yeah, I see them all, but it's funding that supposedly is helping us deal with the emergency and so on. So my question is, what's the I see the amounts, I see, but I don't know what the impact is, kind of. So, who wants to answer that?
I can take that. Commissioner, Mr. Chair. So the impact is, so with the CDBG COVID or CDBG CV funds as well as the ESG CV funds, projects have to qualify as they normally would, helping low to moderate income individuals. With the CV aspect of that, they also have to respond to, prepare for, or prevent COVID-19. So there has to be documented impact from COVID-19 for these individual projects.
Matt, you have something?
No.
Okay, then we'll run through the sheet, because we've got a process we go through for the hearing. So you don't have anything else in the presentation?
No,
Okay.
no, that's it. I should add one more thing, Mr. Chair. We did decide, the advisory committee decided to set aside $350,000 of this funds for round 2. So we have not determined the date of that, but we thought it would be advisable to, rather than to spend 100% of the funds that we received, to hold back just a little bit for sometime this fall to go through a second phase of this, just so that people can adjust a little bit. And one of the challenging things with CARES funding is to try to track where the funding has gone. And holding back a little bit of money could potentially become extremely valuable to some stakeholders that were left out of the other funding pools. So there will be a second round similar to this that I anticipate. We don't have a specific date, but if I was guessing, it would be sometime this fall to get this money spent. We have until September 2022 to spend this money, but just as soon get it to the stakeholders that need it sooner rather than later.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wondering, is this the same where if they don't spend all of this, it comes back to us? Is that the same protocol, or?
No, this is, Brad, I appreciate, Commissioner, if Brad or even Steve is sitting in the community planner, and Steve Nelson is here as well. So.
Chair, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, so if the agencies and communities that were awarded this funding, if they don't use that money, they'll go back to us in that pool, and then we can redistribute it to the communities and other agencies.
Thank you. We need to move on with the public hearing. Thank you. Okay, are there any representatives of other governmental entities that may appear or give testimony through electronics? Nothing? All right. Supporters of the proposed action. Anything there? Opponents? Okay, any other comments or evidence from the public? Okay, need a motion to close.
So moved.
Motion by McDonald, second by Commissioner Boyle. Discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Isn't that, I think we have to do it.
No, I don't think we have to do
You
a
just
roll call.
ask, Mr. Chair, just ask for her. She's on WebEx, so ask her to
Ask her what?
vote orally. The
Well,
rest-
so if she's a vote, shouldn't she be able to vote with us?
I don't know if she hears. You just want to
Commissioner
confirm.
Olson, can you hear us?
I can hear you just fine. I'm happy just to vote yea or nay in the group,
Okay.
Okay,
if that is acceptable.
okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you.
I would move the resolution, Mr. Chair.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Nelson, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Jewell. Discussion?
Yeah, Commissioners, I just want to frame the resolution a bit more. Thank you for moving it so quickly. The amendment, or the resolution, really authorized an amendment to our 2020 action plan for the receipt of these additional funds. The funds are noted in the resolution. approximately $1.2 million in CDBG, CV or COVID grants, and almost $600,000 in ESG COVID grants as well. During the course of the public hearing, you saw some key themes. I would just note that housing rehabilitation, sanitizing, COVID direct impacts were $100,000 went to 3 agencies. $100,000 went out for economic development opportunities to support people and businesses who have been impacted. Thanks to SOAR Career Solutions, Northland Foundation, and the Entrepreneur Fund for being partners in that effort. We talked a little bit about the City of Buell, the investment in the medical services building, but under the public service, I just want to call out that a significant portion of the funds go to United Way for mortgage, rent, and utility program support, which is very important to individuals. Also local food relief, emergency shelter funds, Meals on Wheels, things of that nature were supported through this effort. You heard from staff that we are holding back approximately $350,000 for future investments that we think might come out as a result of seeing the impacts of this first round. And we want to be prepared to see if we missed anybody, number one, or if there's additional support we can give to existing applicants. I would note on the Emergency Solutions grant side that a big chunk of our housing went to range transition housing to support homeless prevention. So that's very critical. In addition, recipients included legal aid and AEOA for emergency shelter purposes. So these are monies that I think strike at the heart of individuals and businesses that are impacted by COVID uniquely. And I just want to, if I could, compliment the efforts of our advisory board, because this was a very quick turnaround. There was an accelerated process that was part of afforded to us by the federal government in this, and Matt and his team, Brad and Steve and Darren, just did a tremendous job of supporting the advisory committee, and I'm very pleased with the efforts and very proud to present this to the board so that we get these monies out to the public to assist our residences and some of our businesses in delivering services that are much needed. So thanks to the board for your consideration. And again, we will amend the plan and execute the allocation or distribution of these funds pending your vote of support.
All right, I'll leave it to vote then, right?
I was remiss in not doing this earlier, but I would like to state this for the record. I am a board member on Range Transitional Housing. I had nothing to do with the application, nor did it have anything to do with the oversight on this, and the recommendations that you're seeing. I will tell you that I've been a board member on there since before I was commissioner, and still enjoy that role. And quite frankly, it's a tremendous organization that Adam Ben and 5 or 6 employees that work there do in our communities, Virginia, Hibbing, basically all the way across the range and up north. They do some pretty outstanding work with young families, especially. I think homeless young families is kind of has become kind of their specialty, and that's something that I think is truly important. But I want to make that disclaimer to the board. I have no financial interest other than a compassion for serving in range transitional housing as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Excuse me. Okay. We've got our second public hearing. It is for solicit public input prior to considering the proposed tax abatement for the City of Duluth for public infrastructure improvements and associated site development. Letter 20-261. Thank you, Matt. Would you care to open the or read the introduction to the public hearing, Phil?
This public hearing is being conducted pursuant to applicable Minnesota statutes and the standing rules of the county board. A copy of the standing rules is available upon request. A formal record will be made of the proceeding. Accordingly, we request that all speakers sign in and state your name and address at the beginning of your testimony. Both verbal and documentary evidence will be accepted by the board. The order for the hearing will be as follows. First, St. Louis County Administration will make the initial presentation. Second, representatives of other governmental entities may appear and give testimony. Third, supporters of the proposed action may appear and give testimony. Next, opponents of the proposed action may appear and give testimony. And lastly, other comments or evidence from the public. Commissioners may question witnesses at the end of their testimony or at the end of all testimony.
Okay. Mr. Chair, Commissioners, on behalf of Administration, Derek Jablonski, Deputy Director of Planning and Community Development, will be making the presentation, provide an overview of the project and the application from the City of Duluth. I would note that officials from the City of Duluth are here to discuss during portions of the public hearing as well, would be available when we discuss the outcome too. So know that they are on hand and we appreciate their presence. But Deputy Director Jablonski, do you want to walk the board through the application for tax abatement financing for the City of Duluth for public infrastructure improvements related to the Costco development?
Thank you, Commissioner, Chair Prebich and Commissioners. Derek Jablonski, Deputy Director of the Planning and Community Development Department. Today, we bring forward for the St. Louis County Board to consider tax abatement financing to the City of Duluth for public infrastructure site improvements related to the Costco development in Duluth. The City of Duluth has identified the need for and submitted an application to St. Louis County for public infrastructure and site improvements at the Costco wholesale site development on Queens Road and West Arrowhead Roads in Duluth. The roadway facilities are under the jurisdiction of St. Louis County, Queens Road and Arrowhead Road. The public infrastructure, such as the water, sewer, are under the jurisdiction of the City of Duluth. The estimated improvements for the application are in excess of about $2 million for the public infrastructure improvements related to this site. The infrastructure improvements are required for the project to move forward. Specific improvements related to public roadways would be traffic control, widening of turn lanes, utility relocation, striping, sidewalks, signals. On the city jurisdiction side, it would be the water mains, the sewer water, storm sewer, and other infrastructure related underground as well. The host Costco is proposing a 160,000 square foot site. It will include a tire center, a liquor store, and their retail operations, and will provide approximately 75 full-time and 75 part-time new jobs for a total of about 150 jobs. And they estimate the annual gross sales about $70 million for the first year of operations. The current estimated market value of the property right now is about $1,100,000. It's generating about $22,000 in tax. After the development, it's estimated that the estimated market value is about a little over $11 million and should generate about over $400,000 in taxes. Of that $400,000, $135,000 will be dedicated to St. Louis County jurisdiction. The City of Duluth is working with Costco and will enter into a development agreement. St. Louis County Public Works is working with Costco and will enter into a cooperative construction agreement on the requirements for the road construction, all that public roadway improvements. The other facet of this project is not only real estate taxes, but Costco will generate a sales tax, which St. Louis County collects a 0.5% transportation sales tax
This one will be dedicated towards St. Louis County road construction projects in St. Louis County. Today, the St. Louis County is requested to provide $650,000 in tax abatement financing to the city of Duluth. Duluth, 1 week ago Monday, the city council approved a $1.35 million tax abatement request for the same development for a total of $2 million. The tax abatement financing would be paid over a 10-year period. Construction of the site will start this fall and will be completed, is estimated completed in 2021, so about a 1 year time frame. The city will require a project labor agreement, prevailing wage rates, and a community benefits agreement with Costco Development for the public infrastructure site improvements. The tax abatement request is only for the public infrastructure and not for the facility, the Costco facility itself. This project will require, similar to past projects, that the county financing policy requirements be waived, such as excess of providing tax abatement of over $30,000 a year, application fees, and other items that need to be addressed in the policy. The public benefits for this project are anticipated to increase the property taxes, the sales taxes, generate new jobs, and provide upgrade and expanded sewer and infrastructure in the ground for future development to occur and improve the services to the existing facilities around it. If the board desires to assist this project, it is recommended that the board authorize up to $650,000 in tax abatement financing in agreement with the city of Duluth for the public infrastructure improvements and sites, associated site costs with the Costco wholesale development. And we do have, in your packet, we have a lot of maps of the site itself, so
I'd like to try and stick to the, we
I
need to
just
do it
want
on
to
the
ask
first
a question of our representatives. Do we know whether or not Costco is one of the big box stores that has pushed to have their assessments decreased for property?
Commissioners, I cannot answer.
And when we have an agreement for tax abatement, is part of the agreement the length of time they pay their taxes regardless of the assessment?
Commissioner Jewell, how our tax abatement works is that we can't provide more tax abatement than the taxes collected, so we'll be paying at the schedule that they're required. Sometimes, if we have a strong tax collection, let's say the assessment's higher and the taxes generated are higher, we can accelerate that payments, but that's the determination of the county. But typically, we spread it over a maximum up to 10 years to accommodate any fluctuations in the market, but typically, all our tax abatements to date have been very strong, I would say, in terms of being able to pay.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any representatives of any other governmental entities that may appear to give testimony? Oh.
Yeah.
Come up front and stand.
Yeah, why don't you take Darren's spot?
Come up here. It's quiet.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. My name is Adam Fulton. I'm the Deputy Director of Planning and Economic Development for the City of Duluth. Here today with Chris Leach, who's the Director. He just stepped out of the room. Good. Hey, Chris. Who's the Director of Planning and Economic Development for the City of Duluth. I want to express the gratitude of the city for the opportunity to work with the county on this project. I haven't been to this facility, and I just am really glad to be in Virginia and to be able to check this out and participate in this meeting today. What we are talking about is a new retail development in the city of Duluth, and Costco Wholesale is kind of retail, kind of wholesale, and they will sell to businesses, and so that business-to-business sale component is an important part of their business model. We have been working with Costco for about a year and a half, and trying to determine the best way to proceed with the project. And on this site, this is a site that has long been planned for development at the corner of Haynes and Arrowhead. A good site for Duluth, a good site for Hermantown because it is immediately adjacent to the city of Hermantown. And I've been very appreciative of county staff, not only in planning and development, but also in transportation, helping us think through some of the transportation challenges that this will present. This is a site that's on 2 county roads, and as we look at changing traffic patterns, we do have to think about the need for traffic signals and turn lanes to make sure that the traffic continues to flow well in this location. It's got great access, not only to the airport, Rice Lake Road, but also to Trunk Highway 53. As we work with Costco, we have a City Council acted on Monday, as Darren mentioned, to approve a development agreement. That development agreement includes terms related to project labor agreement, things like prevailing wage, community benefits. Those are important for the city. As we look at what our values are when we're doing a project like this, we want to make sure that anyone who is coming in and doing a project like this meets those values. We also look closely at the economics of this, and we did want to think about what this project looked like and what sort of the bigger picture looks like. The $2 million subsidy to this project between the city and the county, if approved by the county today, would represent probably just about 5% or a little less than 5% of the overall development costs for the site, and that would include all of the site costs and all of the store development costs that go into that. The development of this site is going to generate sales, and as Darren mentioned, we've got an estimate. We don't know exactly where that will end up. We do know that those sales tend to increase. Year one is at one rate, and it kind of goes up after the years. The city of Duluth did consider sales tax as part of what we are thinking about in the bigger picture. And as we look at it, it really does tend to generate a net benefit for the community. But we didn't think about it solely for Duluth. We wanted to look at it more broadly on a countywide and regional basis, understanding that we are making this request to St. Louis County. Costco identified that they have about 1,700 existing members in the Duluth area that are currently traveling outside our region, either to the Brainerd area or to the Twin Cities, who are doing their shopping in those locations. There are about 5,000 Costco members in the Thunder Bay area. There is not a Costco there. These are people who have a Costco membership who maybe are in Florida in the winter and are traveling back home and are unable to shop at Costco. These are people who will come to Duluth and shop at this Costco. So we are excited to be able to present this today and happy to answer any questions that commissioners may have.
Chair Jukovich, I did have a question that we talked about outside, which is the loss of wetlands as a result of this project. Now, the loss of wetlands, I don't know what it is. 80% of the wetlands in the Miller and Kill Mall area are gone over the last 40 years. And so can you just talk about the city's kind of plan for wetlands in the area?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Jewell. What we look for with wetland replacement is to preserve those wetlands on site first and foremost when we can. And so in this case, we worked hard with the developer to try to make sure those wetlands were preserved on site, including modifications to the site plan to try to reduce the impacts on the areas where the wetlands are of greatest value. As you mentioned, this is in the headwaters of Miller Creek, and it's something we're closely attuned to. The capability of some of that preservation is limited on parts of the site where you do have a surface parking lot or a 160,000 square foot store. And so we do require replacement of wetlands, and in this case, there were not wetland credits available for purchase within Bank Service Area 1, which is the current watershed. So those are being purchased outside that watershed consistent with Minnesota Wetland Conservation Act rules. And what we're, I think, fairly confident in is that this developer is approaching fairly aggressively the landscape requirements, and I anticipate they will exceed the city's Unified Development Code requirement for landscaping. They will also meet all requirements for stormwater management, and that includes both the temperature control as well as the rate control. We want to make sure that there are not flooding impacts nor environmental impacts to that stream where you have a cold water trout stream and you want to preserve the ecosystem there. As we look at the site more broadly, there is a significant wetland complex immediately to the east of the site. And so we don't know quite what Costco intends to do with that. The final determination, of course, is subject to Costco, but it is, I think, fairly likely that those wetlands will be preserved indefinitely and maybe donated back to the city. As we look at this more broadly, we are continuing to focus on Miller Creek and restoration of Miller Creek. We are seeking to continue to work closely with Miller Creek, with the Soil and Water Conservation District to identify restoration areas, and those may include areas that are nearby to the site. And it is a conversation that we continuously have with the SWCD and the City of Hermantown.
Thanks.
Adam, I just want to again thank you and our Chief Officer Schuckman on this. I know you guys have been working with your team for almost a good 2 years on this, and it's been a marathon, not a sprint. And again, we want to plant that seed that anytime you want to do an abatement with the county, we are open ears. We really enjoy those more than TIFs. And I know you can't do abatements all the time, but I've noticed a trend that we are doing a lot more abatements than not in my last 7 years on the board, whether it's with the City of Duluth or Hibbing. We are always listening with abatements, and it makes more sense. You compromise on a few years instead of a generation, which is the way we kind of see it here at the county. I just wanted to bring up the point that, again, so there are no surprises, I think you have done a very good job of keeping the unions on the ground floor, and that it looks like the $2 million that it generated between the city and the county, public monies would be used for project labor agreements, correct?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Boyle, that is correct, and that is something that was a high priority for us, that the funding here is subject to those requirements, as well as being expended on public infrastructure improvements that are necessary to develop the site.
Thank you.
Okay. Representatives, did you have anything else?
No, thank you.
Representatives, supporters of the proposed action may appear to give testimony. Is there anybody? Okay. Opponents? Okay. Any other comments or evidence from the public? Need a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Motion by Scott, second by Rizzo. Discussion. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And I'll move it.
Okay. Moved by Commissioner Jewell.
Support.
Support by Commissioner Nelson. Any other?
Thank you, Chair Commissioner Yugovich. Echoing the sentiments of my fellow Duluth Commissioner, it is nice to see the cooperative agreement. It is also very nice to see it in terms of an abatement versus going what has been a challenge for both us and I believe for the City of Duluth tax increment. But I want to echo the words I said a couple of weeks ago. Look, Darren and the work that he and our planning department did on this should be is something that we need to recognize as well. These partnerships don't just happen. We have to put good people together. We have to get those people to understand that they are together, and then projects like this come out of it. I want to address a couple of the complaints because we have been getting some scrutiny. And I always love scrutiny when it's misdirected or inaccurate. We're not giving away any money here. St. Louis County and Duluth are not giving away any money here. What we are doing is supporting a development. But for, and this is what passes the but for test, if we were not putting this up to improve this public infrastructure around this project probably wouldn't happen. And the taxes, the future taxes would not be collected, which is what we're giving up, is the future taxes of a development we don't currently have. And I want to make sure that the listening public understands that in an abatement, it's not a gimme. There is no money being given away. It's just we're using that development to pay its future costs. And quite frankly, I looked at the time schedules and talked with Darren at length about the time schedules in terms of what the payoff should be. And folks, it's greatly accelerated from what we would typically see. Costco is a big player, and quite frankly, they're going to be generating a lot of taxes and a lot of sales taxes. And if you factor in both of those pieces, those component parts, the payback to the citizens of St. Louis County is a very good one. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, thanks, echoing what Commissioner Nelson said, thanks to the City of Duluth and St. Louis County for the partnership. And I think it's important for people to know too, as talking with Director Faldesy with Public Works, we're getting some major improvements in 2 roads, Crissau roads out there in Arrowhead and Haynes Road that are badly needed. You look at the congestion that is there now, some significant upgrades there in the realm of $1.2 million, I think, is going to make that area much safer and much better, even with the Costco development and traffic going to the airport, et cetera. I think it's a huge plus for all the citizens of St. Louis County. So I just, on behalf of myself and other people, thank you for the partnership. Appreciate it.
Just a couple of quick things. Sounds like it's great for St. Louis County, great for Duluth. It is a project, from everything Adam has told me, where Costco is good as a developer and the way in which they develop the site. I will tell you that my concern about wetlands is not mitigated by the fact that they can buy credits in some other place, but the actual need for wetlands is in the Miller Hill area. And so one of the problems, and it's been consistent for the 40 years I've been involved in this, is that every new project covers up more wetlands in the area. And it's not clear to me that there's a plan to protect wetlands in ways that assure that we won't simply pave over all of them. I love the fact that Adam pointed out that there's a chunk of this land that maybe will come back, be kept wetlands and come back as wetlands. But it does concern me, and it concerns me because it's a problem all over the state. Wetlands have gone away, and they go away because we want development, and so we do this kind of piece. But it's an interesting problem. So when I was on the council 30 years ago, we considered a proposition for this site for a gas station. It was turned down because it had wetlands. Now, I don't know if it was that the developer couldn't buy the wetlands credits, or we had different things, but at the time, the development didn't happen because of the wetlands on the site. And so it's just a concern. I think we will gain from this, but every time you pave over another piece of wetlands, you don't have it anymore. It's not like it can be reclaimed somehow. And I don't know how we deal with that, but it seems important to me. Thanks.
Thank you. Just a couple of thoughts. I'd like to thank Darren, the City of Duluth. It's a good collaboration. I really like the project. Commissioner McDonald, I think, touched on the roads, which is going to be improvements. It's going to be jobs. I think the construction of Costco itself is going to put our hard working men and women into trades to work, more jobs. And then, of course, I heard the number of 75 full-time and 75 part-time jobs. You're looking at 150 jobs, again, in the city of Duluth. And obviously, it's not just the city of Duluth residents that work at these places. So jobs, infrastructure improvements, and again, this board has been very supportive and will be of the trades and any kind of increased work we can have done. So I think this is a win-win. I understand what you're saying about the wetlands. I do. I don't know what the answer to that is, but I do like the project. I'm excited that we're moving forward with it, and I agree, Commissioner Nelson. Also, there's no freebies. These things come back. So it's important we take a look at it from all angles. I think this is a good project, and I look forward to putting a shovel in the ground.
Mr. Chair, I don't know if this is the appropriate time for this or not, but I was in the Duluth area yesterday, and I guess I have to ask Commissioner Mussoff, is he paving every road in his district this year, or is it just all the ones that I drove on? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
He's a machine.
I was going to say it must be Hermantown because they don't have any city roads.
All right, Commissioner Nelson, are you watching there too?
No.
All right. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you for coming. Okay, next we have the St. Louis County Drainage Authority. Commissioner Nelson? No?
We have one more item on the board, Mr. Chair.
Get what?
Oh.
And the consent agenda and one more item on the board.
Oh, okay. I thought we were going to do it right after the public hearing. Okay, my bad.
I'll move consent.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Boyle.
Support.
By Commissioner Nelson. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. The regular agenda, Central Management Intergovernmental Committee, the Jamie Berg Settlement, it's agreement letter 20-262.
I would move it, Mr. Chair.
Okay, moved.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Buell.
Thank you, Chair Jugovich, Commissioners. The action before the board is a request to approve a settlement, a proposed settlement in the matter of a former employee, Jamie Berg, of Berg versus St. Louis County. This has been a subject of a lot of discussion, and I want to acknowledge the efforts of the Attorney's Office to support administration and St. Louis County broadly. The amount of the proposed settlement is $150,000 plus some incidental amounts for taxes and mediation fees. I want to reiterate, and we've had some discussion on this, that we're entering into this agreement solely to avoid the burden and expense associated with any potential further litigation. It is not and should not be construed as an admission by the county that the claims asserted by this individual are valid or that we are liable. But again, this is the based on discussion with our lead attorney and the dialogue that's gone to date, that entering this agreement is in the best interests of the county and county taxpayers. So again, the proposed settlement is in the amount of $150,000 will be funded from our tort liability fund.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carried.
Move to adjourn the county board meeting.
Moved by Commissioner Nelson.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Jewell. Discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. This is adjourned. And we will actually move right into, let's take a five. When Jim Falvey asked for 5, you should be getting.
I just need to get set up.
So, Commissioner Jugovich, sorry, I thought you were talking about, we'll go right into this after that.
Okay, I thought I was going to go right
Yeah,
on.
I led you astray. My bad.
Okay.
Try not to listen.
You led him
Pay
astray?
attention to me, Mike, and you're going to be off.
Commissioner.
Doing well, how are you?
Jerry said,
No issue.
good times.
Working on those HVAC systems for years. We haven't done a recent
don't have to be
testing of anything. We said there's no reason to suspect problems or challenges. And then he just simply qualified by saying, remember Hidden Courthouse. Just the concern of the people in there. How we couched that in terms of our HVAC system.
I wasn't sure if it's in there.
I mean, I haven't heard anything.
And they see
As far as tests required, there's nothing. Okay, perfect, thank
The name Scott Dean caught my attention from the trucking stations.
Oh, that's right.
He's always involved. Nice guy though.
He's a good.
Oh, for sure. Yep.
And he just, what these guys, they got so tough now.
Oh, it's brutal.
Versus down, and so is the other plant,
Right.
the mill in Scott.
Yeah. All right. That's tough. He's a good advocate for his people.
He really is. You're the ditch guy today, huh?
I'm the ditch guy today, but I'm not doing much of anything. Jim's doing most of the heavy lifting here, and EIP is.
Yeah, like Jim says, he always gets stuck doing the heavy lifting, no matter where he is. But,
Well, he's pretty strong. He's capable.
yeah, that's right.
Problem is that the thing was too short.
I was out on Boulder Lake the other day. My wife and I went out fishing there a little bit. And we put in, and there was one of your trucks there, and it must have been lunch break. And they were out there, it was funny. I'm looking over to them there, and I say, make sure you tell Jim Faldacy, you guys did a nice job on these roads. Oh, thank you. And then all of a sudden, lunch break was over. It was kind of funny.
Wait a minute, he knows Jim?
Because the truck was left running. And then, so and I'm looking, that's not a diesel. But they were in the truck there, I was sitting by the dam. But it was kind of humorous.
That road really turned out nice.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Have you been on the new one?
I have not.
Oh, it's just,
It's so smooth.
I want to buy a new car just to drive.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
yeah.
Are you talking the road going into the Boulder Lake
Yep,
access?
from Highway 4 to
Yeah,
Yep.
to
the whole
Boulder.
way
Yeah.
now.
Cool.
Yep,
That's beautiful.
and we paved the landing too.
I go up there
I
cross
couldn't
Sunday,
believe
so I'll go.
that, we did that.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Nice. That was your special request, right?
Wow. Yeah,
Well, Crackaway was running the job, so that's a wreck up there.
the landing is beautiful. They need their break. Because it used to have too much slope.
Yeah,
So you guys cut it down. My wife noticed it because she likes to back the truck. She likes doing it because then guys watch it. Boy, you really got her trained. But she just does a great job backing up like that. And she's, well, it's really nice now. So.
very. Yeah, I haven't been up there yet, but I just keep hearing good comments. So.
No fish, but it's beautiful. I did so well on Rice Lake, but now the weeds are just...
All up now. Yeah.
I took the kids out to Island Lake Sunday.
Yep.
And I've got a bobber fishing spot out there. They're not always big, but we always hammer the walleyes, and it's just a mucky bottom. There's a lot of insects, and there's always a ton of fish.
Really?
It's good for kids.
Oh, beautiful.
You always got to get a few in the live well though for them to play with to kind of settle them down. Otherwise, it's just complete chaos.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
So.
Little kids.
Take
Yep, and then
For
yeah.
us have one in
So
stock.
here's the question. Can we
John Little, Johnson,
I'd like
don't
to
start
have
to replace
EIP
that.
do their presentation first.
Oh, it's getting old enough for all these things to start happening.
No,
Oh,
EIP.
I know, mine's an 05.
Derek.
Oh, that's mine.
Oh, okay.
As much as I love it, I mean, I love my
Okay,
boat.
okay.
But yeah,
And
it's the little
so-
stuff. that's
Online.
We had
Yep,
transducer
online.
issues this
Yeah.
year, so I ended up
So
putting
I'd like to
actually 2 new
have him go
transducers on it. One's a
and then
through hole and
do a
one's a
presentation
external and.
Okay, okay,
So
that's fine.
stuff like that.
And
Wears out.
then you could go to the rest of the, public, blah, blah, blah.
Who bought your boat?
So EAP, St. Louis County.
And actually, Chris will go first.
Okay,
Just
but
presenting
but
the.
when I turn to St. Louis County, I'm gonna turn to Chris?
First,
Yeah, okay,
yep.
Okay,
And then it'll be SEH online, and then me.
okay.
And I'm just
But EAP is first.
after me.
He's got to present
You gotta do your
he's got to present the
Then
petitions and the
EIP,
board packet.
then do you.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yep.
I can make that happen.
Okay, perfect.
You want to sit here? That one right there. You might as well, huh?
It doesn't matter to me
You
where
gotta
you
speak
sit.
loudly, because
I'm-
I gave my mic over.
Well, I'm thinking I'll just go, yeah, right down by Jim or something like that.
Is Brian, Chris, you're going to help you pass the stuff out? Like,
The packets,
And SEH is doing the.
I already handed them out.
yeah.
Phil has his copy.
Okay.
So I'm gonna use the past tense of served on the board. Yeah.
And SEH is doing a complete presentation for EIP.
Yes, that's my understanding.
And I'm gonna note that EIP representatives are here and that the Ericksons are here
Or any questions?
for any questions.
Yeah.
Now I'm drawing a blank. What's the name of the greenhouse? Burns. Right. They didn't like my logging this one. I thought it was pretty good, Jim. See how many damn hooks I got off that septic system?
That's crazy.
Isn't that nuts? That was Jim. That was 8 trees.
It's amazing how much it generates, isn't it?
We're gonna cut enough 2x4s for my son's garage. Of 1/10 of 1 acre. But I'm trying to make people understand.
How
We
much
have
is out there?
900,000 acres. Now, let's say 700 of that is timber, which it is approximately, I suppose. I mean, it's just amazing. People wonder how you can see a logging truck.
Yeah, it's hard to put in a dent anywhere.
That young man there, can you imagine his timing, starting a logging company? I called his dad. Anything I can do to help, I would either in. Because, I mean, that kid's a worker. One glance, you can say, wow. Just, what are they gonna do? They turned their trucks into gravel hauling. Some of it is grass, okay? But
Osmosis.
that's not money.
He switched over to
Chapter 11.
He hasn't switched over, he's always been there.
No, well, I mean, to the map, he had a different map than yours.
No.
Oh, did he? Oh, I thought
You were, hey, Jim, the truth is, he's sitting right under that light, and you probably couldn't see the map, okay?
These guys probably older than Benny.
What's that? Benny?
Yeah. Big one.
I mean, that's up to 300 horses.
You probably want to be on camera first, and then.
Why would you need that?
I want to see how many skiers I can pull. I mean, you could do a water show while
You're not the director, but.
All right, folks, if we're ready. We have a 1 minute notice here. 1 minute.
I won't make that mistake again.
All right, I would like to call the St. Louis County Drainage Authority to order and ask Clerk Chapman to please take the roll.
Commissioner Jewell.
Here.
Commissioner Boyle. Here. Commissioner Olson.
Here.
Commissioner McDonald.
Here.
Commissioner Musa.
Present.
Commissioner Yugovich.
Present.
And Chair Commissioner Nelson.
Very good, thank you, Clerk Chapman. The first order of business is the approval of the minutes of the June 23rd, 2020 meeting. Someone care to make that motion?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Commissioner McDonald, supported by Commissioner Yugovich. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the minutes, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, the motion is carried. Next order of business that we have is a Drainage Authority letter 20-03 and the public hearing on the partial ditch abandonment petition submitted by EIP LLC. And then I think we go right into the, Clerk Chapman, can you read the rules for the public hearing, please?
This public hearing is being conducted pursuant to applicable Minnesota statutes and the standing rules of the county board. A copy of the standing rules is available upon request. A formal record will be made of the proceeding. Accordingly, we request that all speakers sign in and state your name and address at the beginning of your testimony. Both verbal and documentary evidence will be accepted by the board. The order for the hearing will be as follows. First, St. Louis County Administration will make the initial presentation. Second, representatives of other governmental entities may appear and give testimony. Third, supporters of the proposed action may appear and give testimony. Next, opponents of the proposed action may appear and give testimony. And lastly, other comments or evidence from the public. Commissioners may question witnesses at the end of their testimony or at the end of all testimony.
Thank you, Clerk Chapman. I'm speaking with the admin and the team beforehand. We have a roadmap here, so I won't be turning to Administrator Gray, but I'll be turning to Chris from our attorney's office to make the initial introduction.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. My name is Chris Pinkerton. I'm an attorney with the St. Louis County Attorney's Office. As you know, we are here at the public hearing on the partial abandonment petitions submitted by EIP Minnesota LLC for a number of ditch segments located on property largely owned by EIP in the Sachs Zim Bog area. I have for you today and have served upon the clerk a public hearing packet containing the partial abandonment petition for County Ditch 1, an amended partial abandonment petition for ditch number 1, and the partial abandonment petition for the unidentified ditch system. Additionally, we have Resolution 20-01, which established this hearing, an affidavit of mailing and website publication, and an affidavit of publication in a newspaper. Finally, submitted was the engineering report from EOR. With these documents and with notices of the hearing having been provided to potentially affected parties in accordance with applicable statutes, this matter is properly before the Drainage Authority today. Now, before you hear substantive testimony on the petition, I'd like to take a moment to describe the legal framework for the petition. Partial abandonment statute is codified in Minnesota Statute Section 103.806. The statute requires that in order to grant EIP's request, the Drainage Authority must make two findings about segments proposed to be abandoned. First, that they do not serve a substantial, useful purpose as part of the drainage system to any property remaining in the system. And second, that they are not of substantial public benefit and utility. Now, these findings are very important because if the abandonment is granted, the county will no longer have any jurisdiction or control over the abandoned ditch segments. Now, with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have regarding the legal aspects. If there are none, I believe the next step is to turn it over to SEH to present EIP's presentation.
Very good. Commissioners have any questions of our attorney's office at this point? Seeing none, I will look to, first of all, folks, so that everyone's aware, we do have SEH here representing EIP, but we also have a representative of EIP here, as well as the Ericksons, who are the owners of Burns Greenhouse. Neither of which wish to speak. However, if commissioners have questions, they are here to field those questions and respond accordingly. So next, I will turn to SEH to give the report for EIP.
That's Derek, that's...
Yep, correct. So.
Help me out, Jim.
Chair Commissioner Nelson, Derek, could you share your screen and begin your presentation?
Nothing I like better than technology, but it'll take them a little while here. And I don't want to skip ahead because this is the order that we've requested to the presentation to the board. So.
Jimmy is unmuted and he is presenter.
All right, Derek, so you're going to have to unmute yourself. And you have presentation capabilities.
All right, we're gonna take just a minute here if anybody wants to.
Looks like he's on there.
He is on now? Whenever we stir engineers and IT people into the same pot,
We can people on the remote can hear him, but he's very quiet. We can't hear him at all in this room, so he's not coming through from wherever he's going. We can do that, I just don't know what he's going to do.
Jim, you want to advise?
Maybe we can take a couple-minute break.
Okay, 5 minutes, folks. Let's, it's, with this room and these masks, if someone wants to go out and get a refreshment or something, do it now. 5 minutes.
All right, thank you. I apologize for the technical inconvenience. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
You got everybody's attention.
All right, wonderful, thank you. And I assume you see the first screen of the slide presentation, just the title?
Yes.
We do.
Okay, wonderful. Just want to verify and make sure I see what you see. All right, thank you. I will jump into the presentation here. It will be brief and it's intended just to be a bit of an overview of our request here, just so everybody's familiar with it. So we're petitioning for a partial abandonment, and we're really looking for two systems. The unnamed ditch system, which lies along Highway 53, and then ditch system number 1, which lies closer along Highway 7. Specifically, we're looking at ditch M06 for the unnamed ditch system, and ditches L6, M04, L07, and its subparts M12, M07, and L15, and the associated miles with those. We've gone through this process 3 different times previously, and the board, through the Ditch Authority, has previously abandoned approximately 70 miles of ditch associated with the Lake Superior Wetland Bank. This is just the final portion for current phase that we're proposing for restoration as well. And we also want to note that the previous abandonment has resulted in those portions that were abandoned have been physically disabled, and the wetland restoration has occurred. Specific which ditch M06, that's located in that unnamed ditch system. It's west of from Highway 53. That's a fairly large size ditch. It's 15 to 25 feet wide, 4+ feet deep. There are berms on both sides, so it really is an isolated channel. Beaver dams are particularly problematic in there because they have the ability to really make those pool areas quite well with the embankments present. This area does lie entirely within EIP property, but we do want to note that MnDOT does use this ditch for a portion of the Trunk Highway 53 drainage. And with that in mind, they've been included in the discussions on the additional abandonment, and were included previously with portions of ditch M06 that have been abandoned back in 2014. The location of the ditch M06 partial abandonment is indicated here in green. The red on here are other portions of the ditch system that have been abandoned previously. So you can see here we have a portion of it, if I zoom in on detail, already abandoned in blue. The proposed abandonment is here in green. And through our agreement with MnDOT, we were asked to leave 2,500 feet of channel open from the culvert on Trunk Highway 53 to where we start doing any sort of disablement of that ditch, whether it's fill or removing berms. So we have a 0.48 mile section that we're proposing for abandonment. And the limits of this were based off of our hydrology modeling to demonstrate what's coming through this area, what we can handle, and ensure that we don't have any impacts at that culvert or have any sort of effects on the highway drainage. I do want to note the petition originally stated 2,300 feet from the culvert. That was extended a little bit, consistent with previous abandonments where we wanted to have a 200-foot cushion just to make sure any of the modeling or anything in there provides a little bit of a conservative approach to it. So just want to clarify that. The action will be on the 2,500, but one of the petitions did state a slightly smaller number, so we just want to be clear on that. And this is what it looks like from the air. Trunk Highway 53 is in the background. You can see the berms and the ditch carrying through several dams that are in place, but this is what it looks like. And through our modeling, this is what we're proposing to do. Leave this 2,500 foot section in place, remove the barriers so that discharge from the highway can just spread out into the existing wetland. This is off of post-construction LiDAR, so you can see there are a couple of the checks that were built with the previous abandonment, and we just want to remove this portion here. So this kind of represents physically what that means. Moving on to ditch M01 system. This is located east of Highway 7, and it's in two primary locations. We have a series of ditches that we are considering in the northern sod farm, and then we have two smaller sections in the southern sod farm. Looking at 4.68 miles of ditch in total. These ditches are a little bit smaller than M06. They tend to be 5 to 15 feet wide, 2 to 4 feet deep for water. Some of those are a little deeper for if you go from the embankments. And these do also lie entirely within property owned by EIP or in transition to EIP in one form or another. In total, these are the areas that we're looking at. We have a northern sod farm unit and a smaller sod farm unit. If we look closer at the northern fields, what they tend to be are these ditches that run through the former sod farm area, drainages from east to west. We're indicating the ones that we're petitioning for partial abandonment. Those in blue again are ones that have been built previously through past decisions. This is a view of what it looks like. This is looking from east to west as well, so Highway 7 in the background. You can see the sod fields here, the ditches that run through there and carry drainage to the west. M10 is noted here, it actually flows to the south, but that's been a petition for abandonment has been disabled previously. So we're really looking at grabbing some of these smaller segments. Specific to the northern sod farm unit, we did some hydrology modeling to support the abandonment. This depiction here is where we would expect inundation under a 100-year storm event, and this is pre-project, so this is before any work has occurred out there. As you can see graphically, we have flooding from Highway 7, we have flooding from M10, the laterals, it all kind of congregates in this direction. And this would be similar to some of the discussions we had in 2017, looking at this area and what happens out here for flooding as well. What I really want to point out on this, though, is this next slide, based off of our modeling for what we have as proposed conditions. It says current, but this is current topography with a proposed ditch abandonment. Similarly, this is a 100-year event, but what I want to point out is these laterals have been filled, so we don't have flow coming from ditch M10 any longer. And we're proposing to construct a barrier here across the sod farm to prevent any of this ditch M10 flow from going across the fields towards the Highway 7 corridor. And this is really a key part of this that really is unique to ditch abandonment is it's not just a case of removing those ditches, but putting in a physical structure. We have it in our construction plans. This is the alignment of this watershed divide that goes through here. It lies along some of the field access roads that are in place. It will extend to tie it in. And the intent of this is, again, as a watershed divide to keep the flows in ditch M10 from progressing west towards Highway 7. And as a cross-section, you can see it's a very robust structure. We've got a minimum 10-foot top. It has an aggregate core, so we've got good compacted weight in there, and then it'll be encapsulated in an organic shell so it can be vegetated. And even though you'll certainly see a structure in place out there as a barrier, hopefully it looks like a natural feature that it's not, visible, yellow aggregate, or it should be vegetated and should do its job of separating those areas of the site. On the south side, it's a much smaller unit. In general, we've previously abandoned portions of the ditches. Through ownership change is really why we're asking for these two remaining pieces to be in place. And again, from an aerial view, indicating the areas that have previously been abandoned and the portions that we're petitioning currently, you can see are relatively small pieces that just complete that from 10 to highway right of way. So in summary of our request, we are asking for approval of partial abandonment of the ditches that are listed. Total distance is 5.16 miles if you got all of them up. We are asking to accept the findings of the engineer's report and our petition that identifies, as Chris Pinkert has already said, that the ditch is no longer serve a public function. Obviously, that's the key part of it here for decision making. We also want to seek support of the use of that watershed divide to provide that protection for those properties along Highway 7. This is a physical separation that we're incorporating into the bank plan, but I think it has relevance with the ditch abandonment as well. And then through this process, certainly ancillary for your decision, but support the incorporation of an additional 465 acres of restored wetland into the larger Lake Superior Wetland Bank. And that's really the conclusion of our presentation. I'd be happy to give up access to viewing my screen here, but before I do that, I guess I want to ensure if there's anything that folks want to see or have brought back while I still have access to be able to do that.
Very good. Commissioners, are there questions at this point? Commissioner Joe.
So, Derek, I did see that you, in one of the pictures, looking across the property, we see so somebody lives there, has property there. What's the impact of what you're doing on that property?
So what we're intending to do is twofold. One is to eliminate the current drainage that if there's a perimeter berm that's around here currently that tries to keep water out of the former fields. Yep. If that breaches or there's a lot of precipitation, these ditches will carry water directly towards those properties. So step one is to actually fill and remove these ditches so we remove that concentrated flow that goes in that direction. So that's step one. Step two, which will contribute as well, is this is also all underlain with drain tile. We're going to be disabling that, so that will also affect the rate of water that goes that direction because it'll have to soak in rather than being intercepted, fed to the ditches and sped up. And then lastly, in putting a divide roughly across here, it will provide a physical barrier so any sort of inundation that's on this side cannot physically get to this side and contribute towards high water over there. So it's a very conscious, but really three components that all contribute to what we see as a decrease in water towards those properties.
Thank you, Derek. Additional questions, Mr. Commissioner Joe? Commissioner Boyd.
Thank you, Commissioner Nelson. Derek, great presentation, and once you got it working, it's been impressive on these screens here. St. Louis County's up to date. I guess my own question is, when we go down to our annual Counties Association, St. Louis County is very well versed on a lot of what we do, but you go down to southern Minnesota and the commissioners down there know ditches like no other. The one thing a commissioner told me down there is like, always make sure you ask the question where this, you're changing the water pattern. Do you foresee in the near future any neighbors down the line that water's going to drain somewhere else that it'll directly affect their property and we'll have somebody coming back to us? So in a nutshell, does that, we won't have that issue, you think?
Thank you, Commissioner Boyle. Derek?
Yep, so what we're intending to do, and this is probably a better view of it as well, so that barrier is going roughly through here. Hopefully you can see my icon as well. So we have the properties over here that are outside of the bank. We have the barrier, we have the previous fill on these laterals as well. It's reducing the flow. The intention of it is that we're not reducing the amount of water coming down M10. What we're doing is making sure that any sort of spillage that goes in that direction at least has to get past M12 before the natural gradient towards the southwest takes over. So we will expect that water that's still coming south, whichever side of that barrier is going through, will continue along the natural gradient. But what we're doing is ensuring that before it can carry west, that it's far enough south that it doesn't contribute towards anything on these properties along Highway 7.
Thank you.
Very good. Other questions, commissioners, for Derek at this point? And you will be sticking around if there happens to be a question afterwards, Derek?
Absolutely.
Very good. With that, I'm going to turn to Public Works Director Jim Faldesy for the remainder of the county's comments.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioner Nelson, and Commissioners. So I'll need to have the shared screen. All right, it should come up shortly. There we go. See, it worked.
Hey. Wizard.
All right, thank you, Commissioners, and I'm going to try to go through this fairly quickly, so if you have any questions, feel free to stop me as I go. But essentially, we received petitions on August 1st, 2018 and February 14th, 2019 for these partial abandonments of 2 ditch systems as presented. And then we also received an amended petition on July 6th regarding County Ditch number 1. And I'm not going to spend any time on these slides because we've already taken a look at where the abandonments are. This is a bigger picture of the ditches in this area. You'll note that colored in light blue is ditch 1. Colored in yellow is the unidentified ditch system. So those are the 2 ditch systems that are being affected under this partial abandonment petition. And then the area in red are areas owned by EIP. They're a little bit out of date because they've purchased, of course, the additional areas around the north and south units of the sod farm. Again, our task as the drainage authority, or the board's task, is really to determine 2 things pertaining to these ditch abandonment petitions. One is that the drainage system does not serve a substantial useful purpose to the properties that are affected by these ditches, and that also there's no substantial public benefit or utility remaining. And one of the things that we do when we look at reviewing these types of petitions is really from a practical standpoint. If we were to abandon these, are we affecting any of the properties if that drainage no longer is taking place that's being served by these ditches? And then secondly, really most of the time you're looking at how the flow is running, and is anybody upstream, if we were to block up these areas, is anybody upstream affected? And then also, in this case, a little bit unusual is kind of laterally or downstream, is anybody affected as well? So those are the things that we look at as we review the petitions.
We hired Emmons and Oliver, or EOR for short, to help us review these. That's the same consultant that we've used for all 3 of the previous abandonments. So basically our in-house staff, SEH, EIP, and EOR have all worked together to review this petition from a hydrologic and hydraulic and engineering standpoint to make sure that we're meeting the requirements. And the engineer's report is really the result of that process, or the culmination of those activities. That was included in the board packet today. SEH has given their presentation, and really the rest of this presentation for us is to touch on a few highlights, look at the recommendations, and then any conditions we're going to put on this abandonment. From a big picture perspective, again, this is a relatively flat plain that we're looking at. Flow is going from the northeast to the southwest. Interesting part is over 7 miles, this drops about 54 feet. So it is a very flat area, and we have to make sure that what we're doing out here isn't going to adversely affect folks. And again, here's just a big picture slide of how or view of how the water flows through the system. Basically all going towards Highway 7. So specifically looking at the unidentified ditch system, M6, this is the one out by Highway 53. You saw SEH's presentation. This area really now is serving Lake Superior Wetland Bank and MnDOT Trunk Highway 53. Originally, the petition, as currently stated, asked for 0.52 miles. Our recommendation has shortened that based on working with MnDOT to 0.48 miles of abandonment. And that's what you'll see in our conclusions. The South Sod Farm Unit, M7 and L15, all of the immediate upstream areas are in the wetland bank. EIP has purchased the adjacent property around both of these segments, and so they're basically the only property owner now affected by these abandoned segments. So we should be able to meet we do meet the statutory requirements for those 2. And then looking at the North Sod Farm Unit, again, you've seen SEH's presentation, which we concur with. Upstream portions of these ditches are really serving the wetland bank at this point. The berm, we believe, has been adequately designed, and once constructed will fulfill the purpose of protecting the greenhouse properties out there. In addition, just as a side piece of information, there are 3 road segments involved in this area that will be coming before the board for a public hearing on September 1st for abandonment. So that will be kind of the last piece of this puzzle. And as a summary of our engineer's report, the off-site impacts pertaining to these abandonment ditches in the North Sod Farm Unit, we are now satisfied, looking at all the modeling and everything else, that this is going to work on the ground out there. We did have a public notice go out. Those comments outside of this hearing were due July 22nd. We did not receive any comments as part of that process. So basically a summary of the abandonment. Originally there were 4.62 miles petition. Based on revised petitions and discussions throughout the review process, we currently sit at 5.16 miles of abandonment. Those are shown in these 2 charts, along with XY coordinates that we can verify out in the field. This is the same segments that are described in the resolution that are proposed. So basically looking at all of this, we believe that all of these segments meet the statutory requirements for abandonment. that are required, and our recommendation is to abandon those segments, and that is outlined in the resolution. The other thing that we typically do as part of this process is there are conditions that are put on the abandonment, and in this case, EIP will reimburse us for our engineering expenses for the review process. So basically the EOR contract that we have with them to review this petition will be reimbursed for that. We've also asked that EIP remove any beaver dams or obstructions on M6, that would be the Trunk Highway 53 ditch extending from where their work ends out to Highway 53 to make sure that flow is working well as this project is completed. The proposed conditions 3, 4, 5 are pertaining to the sod farm berm or watershed divide, and just making sure those are constructed per our agreed on engineer's report. And then finally, there will be a monitoring plan put in place, and that's also a requirement of the permitting that EIP is getting as well. And so this isn't necessarily an additional requirement, but it's something that we want to make sure happens as something is built out there, that we're making sure that it's working according to plan. So it's kind of a nice little insurance on what's going to take place out there. And then finally, there was a financial assurance agreement that was put in place in 2015 with all of these abandonments. So these additional segments will be covered under that assurance agreement. And then also we have an indemnification agreement that's executed between the parties pertaining to the unidentified ditch system. And actually EIP has already signed that as of this morning. So with that, I will turn it back to Commissioner Nelson, and I'm here for any questions.
Thank you, Public Works Director Faldesy. Commissioners have questions of Jim at this point. Commissioner Jewell.
Just a quick one. So was there interaction by us with any of the adjacent property owners?
Chair Commissioner Nelson,
Director Faldesy.
Commissioner Jewell, not directly, but I guess it'd be through this process and through EIP.
And again, Commissioner Jewell, I would note that the property owners are here.
Yeah.
So, just wanted to make sure that if you have a question of them, they are here for those questions. Okay, thank you, Director Faldesy. Are there any representatives of other governmental entities who wish to appear and give testimony at this point? Seeing none. Are there supporters of the proposed action that wish to appear and give testimony at this point? Hearing none. Are there any opponents of the proposed action who wish to appear and give testimony at this point? Seeing none. Are there any other comments or evidence from the public at this point? Hearing none. I would ask for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Jewell, supported by Commissioner Yugovich. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. At this point, I would look for a motion to approve the resolution that's before us.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner McDonald, supported by Commissioner Mussoff. Discussion. Commissioners, having been pretty close to this entire process all along, I do have a couple things. Everything that we're doing today was anticipated when we did the original agreement. They were removed because of impediments that were part of the process. And the next move that we're going to make on our road abandonment is again something that we've anticipated that'll be coming up in September. But all of this lies in the heart of my district, and you know, we've been working on it for an awfully long time. But we have created what I consider a true gem here in the center of St. Louis County. And it certainly is something that folks travel from far and wide to enjoy some of the amenities of the Zim-Sachs Bog. And without the preservation of these wetlands, that would have been in question as well. So this is a great project. This is not a farmland project. This is a project that's taking care of nature and, quite frankly, lands that probably never should have been drained back in the Dust Bowl days. And that's really what it is. And it's pretty amazing. If anybody wants to take a look out there, I know EIP has been a very responsive, very good partner throughout this entire process. And I know they'd be more than happy to show commissioners the process out there and what they're up to. So, with that, seeing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. That is what we have for business under the Drainage Authority for today.
No other
Administrator
business.
Gray, anything additional?
No other business.
Okay. A move to adjourn would be in order. Moved by Commissioner Boyle, supported by Commissioner Yugovich. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion is carried. We stand adjourned as a Drainage Authority. Mr. Chair, may I jump? Thank you to EIP and to the Ericksons for coming today. SEH for a very comprehensive run on this. Thank you. Next, if I may, Mr. Chair, I'll jump right into the Housing and Redevelopment Authority and call the St. Louis County Housing and Redevelopment Authority meeting to order and ask Clerk Chapman to please take the roll.
Commissioner Jewell? Here. Commissioner Boyle? Here. Commissioner Olson?
Here.
Commissioner McDonald?
Here.
Commissioner Musa? Present. Commissioner Yugovich?
Present.
And Chair Commissioner Nelson.
Here, the first order of business is to approve the minutes of the January 7th, 2020 meeting.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner McDonald, supported by Commissioner Yugovich. Discussion, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, the motion is carried. Next order of business is the appointment of officers as our executive director. And
Almost the same docket as 2019.
this is for the director position. Those have
Oh, I'm
already
sorry.
done.
Oh, my bad.
So you moved Matt Johnson as the director?
Yes, I do.
Okay, moving Matt Johnson as the director. Is there support for Mr. Johnson? Supported by Commissioner Yugovich. Administrator Gray, anything you care to comment on that?
I would only say thank you to Brian for serving as interim director, and I think he's more than willing to hand off the baton to Director Johnson. So just as a reminder to the board, and Brian, jump in if you have any thoughts. Historically, at least in the time that I've been with St. Louis County, this role has been held by our Director of Planning and Community Development, and there's a synergy there with our community development efforts. And so we made that change probably 7, 8, 9 years ago, and this continues that tradition. But I do want to thank Brian for his work as we've made this transition, and of course I know that Director Johnson's ready to take this on, effective, I guess, beginning next week. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Administrator Gray. More duties, no more money, Director Johnson, just so we're clear on that.
Yeah, he does fine.
The next order of business that we have is the Housing and Redevelopment Authority. Did I miss something? Pardon? I have to vote on them, I'm sorry. See, Commissioner Boyle, you threw me a curveball.
I know.
All those in favor of Matt Johnson as the director, signify by sign aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Now you officially have the job with no additional pay.
Thank you.
I did cover that, Commissioner Boyle, if you didn't miss that part of it. Next, order of business, and I got to tell you, I think it was his first day on the job when I tasked Mr. Johnson with looking at this and seeing if there was something we could do, and I'm just so pleased to see it here. It is the HRA Minnesota Power Loan Platting of Lease Parcels, Board Letter 20-04. Would someone care to move that for discussion?
I'll second, Frank.
Okay, Frank moved by Commissioner Jewell, supported by Commissioner Yugovich. And I will turn to Administrator Gray first to frame this, or if he wants me to turn to Director Johnson, I can certainly do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Director Johnson can walk you through this. I'm just very pleased to be bringing an innovative solution to accelerating ultimately development, but also affording residents and a significant business entity a chance to, again, accelerate project and land development efforts. So lots of credit going to both Brian and Matt on this. So Director Johnson, with your permission, Mr. Chair, I'll have him respond and frame the resolution.
Thank you, Administrator Gray. Director Johnson.
Thank you, Commissioners.
I'm smiling from ear to ear under this mask. I want you to know that.
Thank you, Commissioners. What you have in front of you today is a cooperative agreement between Minnesota Power and St. Louis County to proceed with a very important project. We have with us today a representative from Minnesota Power, Jim Atkinson. And Jim and he has been the key stakeholder outside of the county I've talked more over the last 5 months with than anybody else. So I appreciate he's worked very closely on this deal. The opportunity came up, Minnesota Power made the executive decision to hold back on some of their capital projects for this year. So this came forward, was there a way for St. Louis County to facilitate this project? We bounced around a number of alternatives, but the resolution that you have in front of you today would allow Minnesota Power to go forward with this important platting project with the use of a HRA loan that they would be paying back. We would be whole within a 2-year time period. So they've contracted with SEH to do the plat. Minnesota Power retains the applicant status, so they will be submitting the plats to St. Louis County staff for our review. And SEH gets to proceed with working with Minnesota Power on preparing the plats. So this is a win-win-win scenario that we came up with over the last 5 months. Jim Atkinson, is there anything you'd like to add at this time?
Well, sure. Nothing of substance, I would say, but just would like to say thank you so much for the partnership that we have with St. Louis County and for providing the staff that I get the opportunity to work with and keep things moving forward. It was a very creative solution to a very unique time we find ourselves in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Johnson, and thank you, Jim Atkinson from Minnesota Power. Commissioners have questions of either our director or Mr. Atkinson at this point? I would like to comment at least this. I did not know that there was a solution when this was originally proposed by Mr. Atkinson. But you know, we ran it up the flagpole, and Matt, you earned your keep on this one, and because the fact of the matter is that what we're accelerating is going to be a tremendous boom, I think, in terms of these are already developed lots, but these individuals now are going to be able to buy those lots once all of this work is done, and what we've seen, if we experience on these what we've seen on the lease lot sales, shoreline lease lot sales, this will be a tremendous boom in terms of new construction, and when folks actually own the lots, they not only take more ownership as you would think, but typically, there is more development, and typically the higher tax base results from that, which is a benefit to everyone in St. Louis County. So I'm really looking forward to this, and I believe we're starting slow, but there's nearly 1,000 lots if we look at the package in its entirety, correct, Mr. Atkinson?
That is correct, Commissioner Nelson. It's on Island Lake alone, there's 625 lots, and this would be the first phase of that reservoir. But we still have Fish Lake and White Face after that.
Very good. With that, seeing no further questions or further discussion, all those in favor of the HR resolution signify by the sign aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion is carried unanimously. Good luck, Jim, with your project. I'm going to, at this point, I guess I don't need a motion to adjourn, so I will just adjourn the Housing and Redevelopment Authority and send back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Do we want to break before we go to Committee of the Whole, or we'll keep going? Good?
I'm okay.
Okay. All right, let's move right into Committee of the Whole then. Phil, could you take a roll call, please?
Commissioner Jewell?
Here.
Commissioner Boyle?
Sure.
Commissioner Olson?
Here.
Commissioner McDonald?
Here.
Commissioner Musa?
Present.
Commissioner Nelson?
Here.
Chair Commissioner Yugovich.
Present. Thank you. Next, we have the consent agenda. Is there anything anyone would like brought down?
Mr. Chair, I would like to pull down item number 2 and 5, please.
2 and 5. Okay, we'll put 2, obviously, number 2 for Public Works. And we'll do that number 2 for the environment. How's that? Okay, good. Just need a motion to accept.
So moved with those removed.
Nelson or Boyle. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. We'll get right into our regular agenda. First, under Public Works and Transportation, Chair McDonald.
Thank you, Chair Yugovich. First up, we have Board Letter 20-264, which was on the consent agenda. And I'll pull down in regards to a change in construction bidding with the advertising procedure. And I would turn it over to Administrator Gray to thank you.
Thank you. With respect to the board letter number 269, the resolution related to the contract purchase, state of Minnesota contract purchase for sodium chloride and chemical deicers, the action before the board is to approve the award of the contract to the successful low delivered price bid by Morton Salt, Inc. in the amount of approximately $1,356,000. I believe Director Faldis is here if there are questions, but I would highlight a couple of things that he has shared with both Chair McDonald and myself. One, we're pleasantly surprised and pleased to see a price decrease of almost 9% on this contract. Perhaps more significantly, however, from a public works perspective, as the three of us have been talking, is that the contract affords us the ability to go up to 120% of our annual forecasted needs. If the board recalls, we were at 100%, and anytime you have minimum purchase contracts and minimum volumes, and those volumes can go up or down, it's nice to have that latitude, and this restores some latitude that we've had in historic years. So again, the action before the board is for our salt fulfillment contract at our 16 locations. The request is to approve Morton Salt as the low price bid in the amount of approximately $1,356,000.
And I would move that. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Commissioner Jewell. Discussion, questions? Hearing none, and ask for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Now we'll move on to the change in construction bidding advertising procedure. Commissioner Nelson, you care to move that?
I would move that, Mr. Chair.
Is there support? Support by Commissioner Jugovich. Again, it's board letter 20-264, and I would turn that over to administration.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask Director Falsey maybe to come to the table and talk through a little bit about this. But the action before the board is to authorize a revised project bidding status that's more in tune with the process that we've been following and is more effective in our outreach. And it would involve previous print publications, not going that route, but expanding upon our electronic and other mediums to reach out to our contractor community. And in fact, I think Jim will talk a little bit about how we have through purchasing and through Jim's office in Public Works have an outreach mechanism that is very efficient and effective. So this is to get formal board approval in that regard. And with your permission, Chair McDonald, I'll turn it over to Jim to give a little more background.
Director Policy.
Thank you, Chair Commissioner McDonald and Commissioners. So since 2013, we have been doing electronic bidding. That was a resolution that we brought to the board during that year to essentially modernize how we get bids out and how we receive bids back from contractors, and that process has been extremely successful. We used to have a lot of bidding errors as part of that process, and now this process pretty much eliminated those situations, and the contractor essentially can't submit a bid without basically meeting the requirements. So it's been a very good process, and of course now during COVID it's really showing the benefits where people don't have to show up to bid on their projects. So, and of course on the purchasing side of things, they have a similar electronic bidding process through a different software. This software, what we call Bid Express, is the software that we work in. Is one of the neat things about it is contractors can sign up at little cost and basically be notified anytime we have a bid that goes out. And so really at this point in time, contractors get an email from us saying this bid is out there, and that's really their primary way of being notified today. We also have other electronic means. We have what's called an e-advert, or it's an e-advertising that's hosted on MnDOT's website that we submit all of our projects to as well. We have our own, what we call eGram website and the county website. So we have really 4 electronic means of getting our information out for bidders to be aware that our projects are out there. And then up until recently now, of course, we also advertise in the Duluth News Tribune and the Mesaba Daily. And really, statute allows for a process to move away from advertising in paper form. And that's what we're trying to take advantage of at this point. And really, this is kind of a tipping point where we're seeing the newspaper industry, going to in the case of the DNT, we're down to 2 days a week in print. And because of the instability in that in this situation, we want to make sure that we can legally get our bids out. And so that's why we want to transition essentially to electronic advertising bids at this point in time.
Oh, yeah.
Commissioner Nelson?
Thank you, Chair Commissioner McDonald. Look, I pulled this down, a number of years ago when we started down this road. I can recall Commissioner Forsman and I had a great deal of angst over going down this road. because of the fact that we didn't have high-speed internet, we didn't have a lot of things throughout St. Louis County. I am pleased the industry has adjusted, even our folks that sit out in some of our smaller communities have certainly adjusted to this new process and procedure. And you know, even though you know, I have my concerns over losing those print medians, we certainly don't want to lose them. But you know, the fact of the matter is this is more effective, and it saves us a substantial amount of money that we can spend on a road instead of spending it on a newspaper that readership continues to decline. So I'm very, very pleased that this is coming through, and I'm pleased that we've been able to pull it off, because I think we'll see pretty much everyone else, in terms of public entities, start to do the same thing as a result of what we've put together. Thank you, Chair, Commissioner McConnell.
Thank you, Commissioner Nelson. Any other commissioner comments, questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion is carried. That's it for Public Works. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Under Finance and Budget, Chair Nelson.
We have but one item under the Finance and Budget Committee for today. It is a bid proposal to repair a 1975 edition roof replacement and tuck pointing on the St. Louis County Heritage and Arts Center. And I would move it as her support.
Support.
Commissioner Jewell, would you care to move it? I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I think this is a good match.
Moved and supported. I will turn to Administrator Gray.
Thank you, Chair Nelson and Commissioners. The action before the board is to approve a contract with Johnson Wilson Constructors in the amount of $407,600 to address exterior building needs. This includes a portion of the roof being replaced and tuck pointing. I think Commissioners Olson and Jewell and Boyle and Jugovich have all shared at points in time or continue to be involved in our subcommittee or the extension of commission involvement in working with the depot. Thank you. I know Commissioner Nelson's personally looked at the building. This is a project that we, quite frankly, have been aware of for several years, and for several years have been awaiting bonding support to use this as part of our match. At this point in time, in conference with Deputy Administrator Fritzinger and Director Tennis, both Mary and Brian, as well as Jerry Hall, who was here from our property management point, deemed that we need to move forward now, that we, irrespective of a bonding bill, we need to take this action. So with your permission, Mr. Chair, I'd have Director Hall talk a little bit about the project and what the specifics are, and note that our resolution addresses the fact that we believe this should be a match to any bonding monies if and when received. But more significantly, Jerry can talk to the project that we're taking on, and that he's been very patient in kind of stretching this building along, and I think we need to act now as his recommendation as you'll hear.
Thank you, Administrator Gray. And I want to make it very clear that I moved board letter 270R. That's the revised resolution that you all have in front of you. See, is it Director Hall yet? What am I calling him?
Director Hall.
Director Hall. Director Hall. Not used to seeing you in a suit jacket, so I was kind of taken aback there, but please.
Chair, Commissioners, yes, this is the roof itself is on the kind of newer part of the building. It's all flat roof. I believe it's roof 75. It's definitely outlived its usefulness. It's kind of a more complicated roof project because there's multiple levels on the roof. So because of that, you have large walls that make up the parapets. So that's where the tuck pointing comes in, because that's also deteriorated and leaking. Some of the the caps on top of these parapets were never covered with tin, and that's leaking through there too, so we're gonna sheet metal all of that up. The roof is a ballasted roof, we're gonna remove that, use a white EPDM, as my predecessor always liked to put on. And we're gonna add insulation to this too for energy efficiency. We had to do, last year, kind of an emergency repair on a piece of this that was leaking. And that potential is throughout the roof. We looked at some of the leak spots yesterday. That about sums up the project.
Thank you, Director Hall. Questions at this point, Commissioners? Commissioner Boyle.
Commissioner Nelson, so this, correct me if I'm wrong, if you're going in the main entry doors, it's basically the roof to the right, correct?
Correct.
I get comments, I mean,
No, please, I should have said questions or comments, Commissioner Boyle.
I mean, I think the board has been very patient over the last 4 or 5 years on knowing this is coming, hoping that we get some state dollars to help us with matches. You could look at this bonding, what's out right now between the governor, the Senate, and the House. I think it's about 10% of our ask, about $1.5 million. I mean, the glass is either half full or half empty. At least it's 10%, but at least it's there. It could be more of a NERC model where we just chip away at this over 2-3 bonding sessions to hopefully do the work that we can. But this building is, there's buildings in every city that you just kind of think of as the spirit of the city, and this happens to be one in Duluth that is owned by the county, and we've done a good job on it, and we'll continue to. But I just want to thank the board for being patient on this and moving forward. And it's, like I said, it's going to be a long marathon, not a sprint on this one. But next thing you can deal with is the flooding in the basement where that water's coming from. So good luck on that one. Tony left you that one too.
Thank you, Commissioner Boyle. Other commissioner comments? I guess I have a couple. I went down yesterday to take a good look at it because it's been a while since I've been in there on that section. And folks, there is no waiting when you have water coming in on electrical boxes, when you have water coming in directly on the entrance to the building. Not a very inviting type of situation, but I have some other thoughts on this. I mean, look, one, I'm pleased we got a really good contractor down in the Duluth area. It's nice to see that these local companies are willing to step up and fix these iconic old buildings because they're not easy. This is a pretty darn complicated repair. When you look at the size of the roof and you look at that cost, it's a complicated repair. But we've got to fix that envelope of the building. That does not change the fact that we've got all kinds of work to do inside it. I would like us to at least think about some things. One, and folks, I'm not picking on the city of Duluth. I know I'm going to get accused of that again, but the fact of the matter is we have a commitment from them, and we've only received 2 payments this year. And this is, as you stated, Commissioner Boyle, this is an iconic building in Duluth. And the fact that they've cut off payments from that tourism tax to this building doesn't make sense to me. It really doesn't. Not that we can spend it on capital improvements, we can't, but we can spend it on operations, and I find that disappointing. But secondly, I because it does sit in the heart of Duluth, folks. I mean, and don't get me wrong, I can personally attest to kids and young adults from the Iron Range enjoying that facility, because the fact is my daughters did for about 10 years in the DSSO and youth orchestra and other things. So it gets used by people throughout St. Louis County. But I would like us to at least take a half a step back and take a look at possibly requesting of the legislature that we, St. Louis County, look at a tourism tax to support these types of buildings. And I don't think it would be out of line. I really don't. It's certainly something that the city has asked for, and we, St. Louis County, have a couple of these old iconic type buildings that we own, one of them being the depot, the other being Campus Quagama, where supporting these with some sort of a consistent funding stream, we would not end up in these situations where, 25 years down the line, we've all of a sudden got to put a roof on. And the fact that the state legislature doesn't seem to see the importance in a bonding bill. And I find that tremendously disappointing as well. And I'm not blaming any political party. The fact of the matter is they're all adults. And the fact that they haven't gotten it done is I find very depressing that they haven't gotten one done. Not just this year, but folks, we're going on several years of no bonding bills. So this is something we're being forced into because that regionally significant building is not being taken care of by the state of Minnesota in any way. And so I think we would have an argument to go back down to that legislature and say, we rely on tourism. We really do. It's a big part of our economy up here. We can't keep putting this on the backs of only our property taxpayers. So I'd like us to at least think about that in the coming months, possibly as we go into the legislative session, an opportunity that we may have. Look what it has done. Look what it, in and of itself, has done to our roads in St. Louis County. It's nothing shy of amazing. And we take care of our buildings in St. Louis County, and when we don't take care of them, we build a brand new one. And this one is being taken care of now. So that investment is being made by this board. So I'll stop with that. I know I'm throwing out ideas, but I tend to think that even $200,000 out of the loose tourism tax is a drop in the bucket when you consider it's $12 million in tourism taxes. And possibly we can look at that and piggyback on that as an opportunity for us to be able to take care of these things with a more appropriate, I believe, a more appropriate funding source. Seeing no further comments at this point, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. The motion is carried. Chair Commissioner Yugich, that is all I have under the Finance and Budget Committee for today.
Thank you. Move on to Environment and Natural Resource. Chair Musso.
Yes, thank you, Chair. One item and one item pulled down. I'm just going to go in board letter order here. Letter number 20-267, pulled down Environment and Natural Resources. And it is the, excuse me here, a second, moving stuff around. The action, it's kind of an interesting project for the balsam fir timber contracts here, and I would move this.
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Nelson. Administration, would you frame this for?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Chair Musoff and Commissioners. The action before the board is a request to approve an application to repurchase state tax forfeit land, specifically the Zaponchich property.
Administrator Gray, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You moved the balsam fir one.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
And I apologize for interrupting you, Administrator Gray, but I...
My bad. Let's do that first. And we've got, to that one, we have on the balsam fir price adjustment resolution number 267, that was brought down by, or requested to be reviewed by Commissioner Nelson, Chair Musoff. The action before the board is to authorize a price reduction for balsam fir on the timber contracts that quite noticeably have been impacted by recent mill closures, shutdowns, and delays. If the board recalls, we sent out and I say we, including Director Weber, Assistant Deputy Director Meyer, and Deputy Administrator Fritzinger, a host of options to help our timber industry relative to the Verso paper mill closure and a number of other terms and modifications to contracts. This is one of the options that we have with respect to impacting or helping our logging industry in a way that we can administratively and through board approval accomplish. In this case, the ask before the board is to reduce the balsam fir price from $15 per cord to that $5 per cord to make this a more affordable investment by the timber industry. And with your permission, Chair Musaf, I turn it over to Land Commissioner Weber to fill in the board a little bit and just encourage you also to revisit the board memo that was issued earlier in the month because there's a number of things that we're doing to work with the timber industry, and this is but one of them.
Thank you, Administrator Gray. Director Weber.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. Mr. Chair, Commissioners, as we heard earlier this morning, the closure of the Verso paper mill has severely negatively impacted our local logging community. And demand for certain species, especially balsam fir and black spruce, has been significantly reduced. So, St. Louis County Land and Minerals Department, we're looking for ways to provide some relief to our logging community. We heard again this morning how very important our loggers are to our forest management objectives and to the economy and just to our lifestyle. So initially we sent out a board memo that provided some relief in certain aspects through extensions of timber contracts and reducing utilization standards and addressing how we might sell contracts into the future. Our next step is in the resolution before you today, in that we're looking at reducing the current cost of balsam fir on existing contracts from probably an average of $15 per cord to $5 per cord, just to provide that additional relief. And we felt we needed county board approval to adjust those prices rather than through a board memo. So that's what we have for you today. We're looking to determine what that might cost county in terms of those contracts, reducing the price of balsam fir. We'll get that number, but we're hoping that maybe that can be covered by the CARES Act, the COVID-19 Act. So Jason Meyer is here if there are specific questions as to how this might affect current contracts. Otherwise, we encourage you to approve this resolution.
Thank you, Director Weber, and I thank you for finding small ways to help out in our challenging times. Questions? Commissioner Nelson?
Thank you, Chair Commissioner Musaf. I pulled this down because I did want to highlight it. Look, we know we have a logging industry in trouble, and I want to compliment Director Weber and Deputy Director and his Deputy Director as well on reaching out to the logging industry, providing them with this relief. It is a common sense move that we're being asked to take, and both Director Weber and Deputy Director Meyer deserve a great deal of credit, because as they do this, I can assure you that every other county up here will be reacting to what St. Louis County does. And likely the state of Minnesota will also be reacting to what St. Louis County is doing. That's the leadership role that our land department has been placed in over these many years. And I think, I know I certainly recognize it as a board member, and I know my fellow board members do as well. So just wanted to pull it down and highlight that the issue is there. We're making changes to adapt to it, and I think it's truly the types of moves that we need to make to keep this industry viable into the future. Thank you, Chair Commissioner Mussoff.
Thank you, Commissioner Nelson. Commissioner Boyle?
Thank you, Chairman Suppleman. Agree with Commissioner Nelson. Needed, and thank you, Director Weber. You hit on that we might be able to, the lost revenue from these contracts that we just renegotiated, we might be able to come back around with federal dollars, the CARES dollars. Is that what you're looking at, Director Weber?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, yes, we're hopeful that CARES Act funding can be used to offset that loss in revenue. And I think that is in our proposal that you'll see in the next full board meeting, perhaps. So yes, we are hopeful.
It's a win-win. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? All right, moving to a vote. All in favor say aye.
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 Ayes? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Second on the docket here, letter number 20-271 is the repurchase of state tax forfeited lands. I will move this. Is there support? Supported by Nelson. Administrator Gray, would you frame this one for us, please?
Thank you, Chair Mussoff, and I appreciate you letting me get a second crack at this. Thank you. The action before the board is to approve an application for repurchase of state tax forfeited land. Specifically, this is the Zupansich-owned land that we've been talking about, where the building and the entity is operated as Surtec Inc., which is a metal plating business. We had considerable dialogue, and at one point in time, the city of Evelyn had expressed an interest in seeing this on the delinquent tax list. That has changed as of this date. But Deputy Director Marinucci has been working on this extensively. I would acknowledge that we have representatives from the Zupansiches here as well. And with that, Chair Mussoff, I would send this over to Julie to talk to the board through a little bit more in detail about the dialogue that's proceeded since we first brought this to the board on committee of the whole. I would, and I'll just let her talk through that. I would just note that broadly the taxes and assessments due are approximately $20,000 plus some miscellaneous D taxes and other fees. And that's the amount that is being proposed as part of the repurchase agreement.
All right, thank you, County Administrator Gray, Director. Just to set this up, we went through and Commissioner Nelson and I met with Mr. Zupansich at the property to walk through and look at the site. A bit of the history is he's operated his business there for many years, and responsibly he had one environmental issue that has been remedied, but it did impact the city of Evelyn. So as part of our negotiating on the repurchase conditions with the Zupansich family, we've laid out a few things that you'll see in the repurchase agreement. And that includes the removal of the personal and business property. The property is full of materials and supplies and barrels of things used in the plating business. So part of the agreement is that those things be removed properly and in conjunction with the PCA's guidance and help. The next thing would be the city of Evelyn can cover damages due to this chromium spill that went into the sewer system. So the city of Evelyn has been working hand in hand with them. They've laid out the expenses that they incurred to the tune of $16,282.04. The Zupansich family has agreed to make them whole and pay for those damages that the city agreed to. And then lastly, we're looking for all of the cleanup and everything to be done by the end of the year, December 31st. So those are the terms. All parties have come to agreement on those terms. And the environmental concern that was raised by the city on this comes, we've got confirmation from the PCA that is closed. We're awaiting the closure letter, but due to COVID and routing and whatnot, we haven't gotten the final. We've only gotten the draft from the PCA, but we do have a commitment that they've met all of the terms. So I would entertain any questions that you may have in regards to the repurchase.
I don't have any questions. I have a comment.
Go ahead, Commissioner Nelson.
Thank you, Chair Commissioner Musa. Look, sometimes bad things happen to really good people. And this is one of those cases where something bad happened to really good people. And in conjunction with conversation with Mr. Zaponcich's Commissioner McDonald, and the business lies in my district, but in that dialogue, that's really what I think we came to, which is that bad things sometimes happen to really good people. This is a great agreement. It's a great compromise for the taxpayers of the city of Evelyn, and I think it serves the broader community of St. Louis County going forward, because as Mr. Zaponcich moves on with the sale of this property, what an incredible asset it is to that industrial park. So I want to personally thank the Zaponciches for their patience on this. And we're government, we don't move very fast, okay? But again, it's nice to see that level of cooperation and the understanding, and I think we can, by the end of this year, we'll be out of this situation, and everything will be back to normal. So thank you too, Julie, for your work on this. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chair.
I just want to add, I appreciate your patience just in being here for the last 4 hours and having the last item on the whole agenda. So thanks. I too am glad that this got resolved and that you were able to get your property back, and that your family was so supportive of making that happen. So glad to have it happen.
Thank you, Commissioner Jewell. Any other questions? It does look like a great plan set in place to move forward for you folks. Is there any comments you wanted to add?
No, we appreciate Julie's help on this, and Commissioner Nelson coming all this way.
Yes.
And so I think it's a great compromise.
Thank you very much. No further questions or comments? Move to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it. Motion passes. That's all I have, Mr. Chair. Back to you.
Thank you. All that's left is commissioner comments and reports. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Chair Prebich. First, I just wanted to say I challenge anyone to prove me wrong that this building, this public building, if there's a more impressive entryway than anywhere else in St. Louis County, it's just been really impressive to see. This is my first time through, and this is something we should be all proud about, north and south, that we have just a real beautiful, warm setting for folks to come in and use their services. So I was not expecting that, so that's impressive. Just my other item, and I just want to lay the seed down here and say, I feel very confident in this room. I think we got to a point where there may be about 20 of us in the room. My gut feeling is when flu season starts out back in October, things are going to ratchet up big time again. And I just want to make sure that we get our ducks in order in line for when that happens, and we're doing everything that we can to be safe for ourselves and our constituents. I think it's very good, especially during this pandemic, that we have the IT ability to have Facebook Live and have some venues for people to watch us live during these meetings, which was done today, which I really like. I think it builds in that transparency that we all are looking for and move forward. But at the same time, I want to, I'm leaning on you, Chair Jugovich, is to just make sure that we are following all the recommendations as close as possible. For viewers at home, when we came into this building, we had someone that gave us a temperature check and had us alcohol in our hands. It's that type of things that are needed and continue to be, but at the same time, 20 people in a room is in a smaller room. We may need to do some tweaks moving forward. Whether that's what that is, I don't know, but I just got this gut feeling things are gonna get tighter on us once the flu season starts back up, and we better be ready for that. Thank you, Chair.
It is a beautiful building, and hopefully we can celebrate it and get an opening soon. Anyone else?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Today was the celebration for this building. Okay. Not painting is the celebration, so I'm not going to ask for any more of a celebration from anyone else because the reluctance has been more than evident. With that said, I wanted to comment because many of you who, as we're attending these meetings, many of you have seen the different messages that I've worn on masks. Farmers Feed America, customer service, Twin Metals, Polymet, Line 3. I want to assure everyone that I've had individuals talk to me about supporting the fact that I'm doing this and wanting to donate to the cause, and I will assure that any donations received by this commissioner will go directly to the Youth in Action Scholarship Fund that St. Louis County has, where those kids earn money and put into that scholarship fund. So I'm going to continue wearing these, and anything that comes in as a result of me wearing them, I will assure you that money will be accounted for and go directly into that scholarship fund. So as you see my billboard, understand it has a purpose too. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anyone else? Commissioner Olson, we didn't forget about you. Anything?
No, thank you. Appreciate you checking in with me.
All right.
Move to adjourn, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Second by Jewel. No discussion, I'd imagine. All in favor? Opposed? Motion
Aye.
carries. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Oh, come on, Bill. Come on.
It's not easy.
I didn't want to hear anything.